In this module, the main thing I want to talk about is how to develop relaxed power, okay? If we rely on strength, big muscular strength and being forceful, is going to be limited. Our self-defense abilities are going to be limited. You might just as well go to a gym, build up big muscles, and if you want to be forceful and powerful, I say, don't worry about martial arts, go to a gym, build up some muscle. Okay, if you are interested in self-defense, then particularly small people and women, you have to have a whip-like power about it. Because if you're thinking in terms of being forceful and, like I said, it's going to be limited. You want a snapping feeling, which gives you a high-speed impact, okay? Okay, you're looking for that high-speed impact, which you don't get a high-speed impact if you're relying on strength. Strength and tension slows you down, okay? So you want to get away from thinking in terms of strength and tension. A lot of people teach tension on the ends. I don't, but we'll come back to that later. Now, those who train with me will all know I like to carry a spare belt, which I use for demonstrations. Now, I'll talk about whip-like technique. Okay? The way the whip moves through the belt is the same way that the whip should move through our body, okay? It starts with a handle. The handle is where the hand is. It starts off straight back. As we start moving, we move forward from the handle. Okay, I'm only putting power in here at the handle. I'm not putting power in at this part. I'm not putting power in at that part. All those parts, all the power is going in where the hand is, at this end, at the handle. The rest of it is just being transferred. And it gets transferred like a wave going through the belt. So as a wave goes through, there's a bend which goes through until you get to the end, and there's that snap on the end. So, like I say, there's a wave going through the belt, a continual wave. It transfers from this part to that part, then it transfers to the next part, transfers to the next part, and so on. It's not about the whole thing moving together. Now, if I decide, well, this is just a flimsy piece of material, I want to make it stronger and more powerful. So I starch it, get it nice and starched so it's nice and stiff and rigid to make it more powerful. Okay? It's not going to snap anymore. That rigidity of the starch is going to stop that wave moving down smoothly. And that is what happens when you tense your body. Okay, so we've got to move away from that idea of tensing the body or using strength. We've got to have a high degree of relaxation. Right, another thing which I think is very important is, and this is something which either you're going to think I'm crazy or you're going to find is very enlightening. I never teach people to tense at the end of a technique. Okay, most people teach you tension at the end of the technique. Certainly that's the way the Japanese taught it to us and was passed down to us. But like I mentioned earlier on, when you actually make contact to the point of completion, that is where the power is, not at the end. Okay, what I like to think about at the end of a technique is that your arm is taut. So when you punch, everything is stretched out. It's like the feeling, if you imagine like you're trying to reach both sides of the wall, both sides of the room at the same time. That's the kind of feeling you want on the end of the punch. So as you punch, at the end of it, there should be a feeling of being taut. Now, if you're not sure what taut means, it basically means stretched out, okay? It's a stretching feeling. And just for a split second, you want that feeling of torsion, of being taut in the arm for a couple of reasons. One is, as I mentioned earlier on, when you tense, it tends to pull things back in towards you. So I want to think in terms of being taut rather than being tense. Okay, so always, I mean, at the end of the technique, when you get to that feeling of being taut right at the end and everything's stretched out, it feels like it's tense. Just for a split second, the feeling is very, very similar. It's like when I whip the belt. When the belt is at the end of the whip, the whole belt is taut, but it's not tense. Okay? The belt doesn't suddenly become rigid. It's still flexible, it's still mobile, it still bends easy, but just for a split second, it's taut. And that is what we're looking for at the end of a technique. Okay, one of the things I've talked about when we're punching is rather than tensing and pulling the joints in, okay, tension tends to pull everything in, kind of letting the joints stretch out. And I just want to do a little exercise, which I suggest you get together with a training partner and give this a try. But first of all, just as a little exercise, just stretch out like you're trying to touch both sides of the room at the same time. So, feeling of opening up all the joints, your elbow joints, your shoulder joints, your wrist joints, feeling like you're stretching everything out. Okay? Now then, I'm going to borrow Paul. And the first, I'm simply going to try and push Paul. Okay, so come a bit more in the centre, please. Thank you. So if I push Paul, thinking about using physical strength, okay, a lot of tension, a lot of strength, and Paul resists. Okay. Okay, I can move him. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Now that feeling we was talking about, where we're stretching out, okay, and opening up all the joints. I'm going to do that, but I'm going to put that into the push. So I'm going to use less physical force, but just use that feeling of stretching out, and we'll see what the difference is. Okay, ready? That's better. Yeah, you see I'll move Paul quite a lot more. Okay, is more relaxed? We'll do it one more time. Thank you. Okay, so again, rather than physical strength, I'm just going to stretch out through all my joints. Okay. So you see it's quite easier for me to move Paul when I just stretch out through the joints. Now, I'll suggest you try this with a training partner, because just watching it on the video, it can look a little bit contrived. So have a go with a training partner, try it with full-on strength, and then try it just relaxing more and just pushing out through all the joints. And you should find the second one, if you're doing it properly, the second one will work better. Now, then think about putting that into your punch or any other technique. So when you're punching, getting that feeling of stretching out. So when you do punch, it's all going into the target rather than tensing and pulling some of it back. Is that same feeling with the push is going into the punch, but it's going in much, much faster and doing a lot more damage. So I say, get together with a training partner, give that a try. Now, the first part of it, like I say, we start with the handle, and that's where all the power goes in. And the handle, for most of our techniques, is the hips. And it's how we move the hips to kind of generate that power. And obviously the part that move the hips are your legs. So the first part, I'm going to have a quick change, because with this big baggy gi on, you can't really see how the legs are moving very well. So I'm going to get a pair of shorts on so you can see how the legs move, and then we'll take it from there. So I'll just have a quick change. Okay, there's my quick change. It may look like I'm not wearing anything underneath this. I am actually wearing shorts, just in case it looks a little bit odd. You can probably see more clearly my microphone lead there. Sharp-eyed people will have noticed it before, but you can see it a little bit more clearly now I'm wearing shorts, but don't let that distract you. Okay, so I'm talking about using the hips as a handle. Easiest way to demonstrate this is to start from the reverse punch position. Start from that position, because that leg is then, shall we say, in the correct position, okay? Or it's in the relaxed position of having let go of the punch. When we pull back to the ready position, okay? Now, you see that knee doesn't move. Okay, that's why I took the gi off, the gi bottoms off, because it's difficult to see with big baggy trousers on. So you can see that knee doesn't move, but the hip does. So I've got this. Okay, now this gives me quite a coiled feeling, which I'm looking for. Okay, that calf muscle is really pushing down into that floor. It's compressed into the floor. The thigh muscle, there's a torsion in it. Now notice I say torsion, not tension. We're not looking for tension here, okay? A torsion, for those not mechanically minded, easiest way to describe it, it's like a rotational stretch, if you like. So we start off in this position because the leg is more relaxed, okay? And then pull back and get it into that compressed position. Now, if you do a style like of Taekwondo, and I don't say this in any disparaging way, this may feel a bit awkward because you'll be used to having your legs fairly straight for kicking. Most kicking styles are a lot more upright, so this is going to feel a little bit more awkward, but I would encourage you, although it may feel a little bit alien to you at first, just give it a try, okay? So we get in a reverse punch position, okay, so that leg is in this nice position, pull back, and you notice the hip comes back, but the knee doesn't move. Now the other thing is that knee doesn't move either. So that gives me a nice coiled back leg, all spring loaded. When I release that spring, it drives that hip forward very fast. That's the handle of the whip, and that's the one that I want going forward, very, very fast. Okay, so like I say, that's the handle of the whip. Now, the other important detail here, I'll do it round the other way so you can see. As I coil the hip, this knee doesn't move. When I release the coil, again, this hip doesn't move. So this hip is moving, driving forward, but this hip isn't. It's like that's the door hinge. Okay, that's the door hinge there. So everything goes forward about that forward joint. Okay, I keep on hearing in a number of places that with some styles, as they punch, one hip goes forward, one hip goes back. I don't know what styles do that. I've always trained in Shotokan, and they've always taught rotate from the front hip, so everything's going forward. I don't know what styles do actually pull the other hip back, but I would suggest, rather than sticking rigidly to a style, and rather than, as we were talking about in the last module with the Shihari, I would suggest maybe try it this way. Okay, so you've got that coil, okay, and then that front one is the hinge. Okay, and everything is propelled forward. That's the handle of the whip. So everything is thrown from here. Okay, so we'll start there and we'll work our way back up the body again. Okay? Okay, so another quick change, and I've changed back into my gi again. I feel a bit more comfortable now. Right then, so we've talked about the handle of the whip, the hips, throwing that forward, okay? Throwing that forward, how the legs work to throw it forward. Now we're going to work up through the rest of the body, okay? I'm going to use a punch as an example, but this principle applies to almost any technique, but we'll look at that a little bit later on. Okay, so the next thing is the torso. Now, as I talked about earlier on, the wave going through there, okay? If I starch this, I make it tense, then the wave isn't going to go through as smoothly as it does at the moment, and the power will not be transferred quite so smoothly. So, I'm just trying to run away. So, if we look at the torso, the same principle applies. So we're always taught power comes from the hip, and we're always taught that the body should be relaxed. But what I tend to find in most karate and taekwondo classes that I've seen or been in, usually the torso is turned as one complete unit together. Now, if your torso is truly relaxed and you generate a lot of speed at the hips, then it should hip go first and then the shoulder. Okay, there should be a slight delay before the shoulder goes, and that is the wave going through the body. Okay, so that is actually, this is exaggerated of course, but the hip goes, the shoulder hangs back a little bit, and then the shoulder goes. Okay, hip, hip, shoulder, hip, shoulder. So you get a feeling of the shoulder actually being thrown as that wave transfers through the body. And you can only get that with a high degree of relaxation of the torso. Okay? Any tension at all and it doesn't work. Now, just to give an analogy, if I use a flexible ruler, okay, when you turn your whole torso as one, it's a little bit like if I hit the wall from there, I turn the whole ruler as one. Okay? If I use that wave feeling of hip first, then a shoulder, it's like doing that with a ruler. Okay? So that's what you're effectively doing with your torso. And whenever there's a bend or torsion or whatever, the body always wants to return to its relaxed position, the same as the ruler wants to return to its relaxed position. So if I do it that way, you can hear the difference. When I turn it all as one, when I put that flex in, okay, it's sitting at the same. It's not taking any longer to hit the wall, but you can hear the difference when you put that spring into it, because that spring, it wants to release itself and go back to its relaxed position. And that's what happens with your torso. The hips go, you've got this rotational torsion, and the torso wants to release that rotational torsion and return to its relaxed position. So instead of thinking about thrusting out the arm, you actually get a position where it's thrown rather than thrusted. Okay, we'll come back a little bit more onto that in a minute. So the next thing, okay, we've got the relaxation of the torso. There's the wave, like the wave going through the belt. There's the wave going through the body. Okay, now the correct position for the shoulder is if you stand aside, just put your arm up nice and relaxed. That's the position of the shoulder. Okay, if I turn the shoulder in, I'm stretching those muscles, and it's like me putting starch in that belt. Okay, I'm putting tension in there by stretching the muscles. Tension is not helping me. Okay, there's a difference between putting this, when I put the compression into my calf and this rotational torsion into my thigh, I use that to release and throw forward. Okay, release and throw forward, and that is transferred by the wave going up the shoulder. But for the shoulder to transfer that wave down the arm, the shoulder has to be relaxed as well. Turning it in creates tension. Now, moving on to the arm. Okay, normally a lot of people are told to thrust the arm forward. And they're doing it with a lot of strength and a lot of power and tension and so on. I always say if you do this right, the feeling is of the hand being thrown rather than the hand being thrusted. And again, that requires a lot of relaxation. If you're thinking in terms of thrusting your arm, okay, you're thinking of terms of quite a muscular effort to drive that forward. I'm saying take out that muscular effort, relax, and just let the arm be thrown by that wave. So as the wave goes through, it's that kind of feeling to it. Done a little bit faster. Okay, that's a feeling to it. A nice good snap to it, yeah? And that gives a high-speed impact, just like when I snap the belt. And again, we're not looking for, we are looking for a penetrating punch that's going to go into somebody, but we're not looking for quite the boxer type punch where they're looking to go all the way through the targets because they've got a big sponge on their hand. Okay, we're looking for a whip that goes, you know, there and back, high speed impact, there and back, rather than the boxing side where it's going all the way through the target, in one side, out the other, which is why their punches tend to be a little bit more circular, ours tend to be a little bit straight, although we do have circular punches as well, of course. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. That's the wave going all the way up the body. Okay, now it does work with other techniques as well. If I take a knife hand strike, for example, okay, again, that same mechanic of the hip, shoulder, but it's a little bit more pronounced here as well. So it's hip, twist through the torso, shoulder, elbow, then the hand. I say, because it's a bit more circular, it's a little bit more pronounced. So here the elbow comes round, and only when the elbow gets there do I transfer the wave to the hand. Okay? People often make the mistake when they're starting of trying to chop through with the whole hand. Okay, a big circular movement coming around there. I mean, as we come round, the hand, the striking parts, if I do it towards you, as the hip comes round, that hand is coming straight towards you. Hip comes round, shoulder comes round, elbow comes round, and the hand is still here. So I've got it all the way round to the elbow, and the hand is still here. And then that last bit, it comes round and curves in right at the end. Okay, so it's not a big circular thing coming around here. Okay, when I snap the belt, if I do it against the wall a little bit, when it actually hits the wall, it's coming in just at the end, it's flicking in that way. So the strike is actually coming in there at the end, although most of it is coming forward, flick round at the end. And that's how a lot of our techniques work, particularly the more circular techniques. Okay, if I look at a rich hand strike, again, hip, shoulder, and then at the end, the hand kind of goes forward and just arcs in at the end. Okay? Now, even if we look at some Kung Fu styles, some of them use kind of big windmilling movements, and I've got a friend who does Chorley foot, and I'm not going to pretend that I'm any good at Chorley foot, so any kind of Kung Fu people watching this, I apologise for bad technique. But they often do techniques where you step across and big movements, these type of strikes. Very, very powerful. But again, they work the same way. They step across, they turn the hip, a wave goes through the torso, and then that wave through the torso is transferred into the arm to whip it down. Okay? They'll come around one arm, step across, bang, bang. And again, it's that same turn the hips, wave going through the torso. So it works with Kung Fu techniques as well. It works with more circular techniques.